All right, it's time to talk about it. Quin Snyder, in. Nate McMillian, out. Trae Young, coach killer. Georgia sports media, trash. We're going to get into all of that after the intro. What's going on, you squares? It's your boy Man Down's 1/5 of the Man Down podcast, but this is Bird Dog Brave Talk, where I give you my perspective from a fan's point of view about my favorite teams. And today we talking about, you can see by the thumbnail, you can also see by the lower third, Quin Snyder, new coach of the Atlanta Hawks, former Duke point guard, former Missouri coach, if I'm not mistaken. Also, former assistant under Mike Budenholzer in Atlanta. For those of you who didn't know, this isn't his first go around in the A. Also, more notably, former Utah Jazz coach, led them to the number one seed, I believe, one season. All of this is off the top of my head, so correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. To the number one seed, they really had a really good regular season record, but I think that in the playoffs that roster, the talent level on that roster really plateaued, and they weren't able to get past any of their first rounds, which led to Quin Snyder stepping down. Really, I feel like instrumental in the development of Donovan Mitchell becoming the starter he is on today. Was there with him in his formative years, watching him grow and kind of guide him grow. I think he even Donovan did vouch for Quin to Trae when rumors started to swirl. And honestly, one of the best coaching candidates out there. You really wouldn't think, honestly, that the Hawks would be able to pull in a coach of this caliber, considering the fact that so much has gone on in this season already. Firing a coach in the middle of the season isn't new for the Hawks. They did the same thing with Lloyd Pierce, and I felt like he should have been fired. And they did the same thing this year with Nate McMillian. And for different reasons, although the outcome is the same, I felt like his time had come and gone as well. And we're going to talk about that before I get back into Quin Snyder. Okay, let's talk about it. Trae Young, in his fifth year, on his third head coach, has started to get the label coach killer. Now, I guess coach killer is a player. If you're the best player on the team and you don't agree with the coach, he ends up getting fired. They start blaming the player. Whatever the case may be, it's been a age-old adage that people have used when they want to say a player is being difficult and making things difficult for the coach. Stop the cap, please. It's ridiculous. Trae Young is not a coach killer. Lloyd Pierce was just not a good coach. Let's just call it what it is. Anytime that you are going to other coaches, asking them not to select your point guard for, I believe it's the All-Star game and Team USA, and your point guard is single-handedly leading you to relevancy after this rebuild has taken years and years and years and years to happen after the 60-win Hawks team, the Mike Budenholzer, ironically, led team. We were just now getting back to relevancy, and you come in and you do this. There's a reason that Lloyd Pierce has not sniffed a head coaching job and is not even being considered for one after his firing from the Atlanta Hawks. We've had players come out and say recently is Chandler Parsons, which I take that with a grain of salt. I really don't know what people's opinion are on Chandler Parsons, but he played for him, and he said he didn't like the guy. He also said that Trae Young is not this bad, mean guy who's looking out for himself and trying to bash coaches and going to ownership and doing all that other stuff. He also said that as well. Nate McMillian was a different story, a slightly different story. I think that Nate McMillian was the better coach, and it's really hard to get rid of a coach who leads you to an Eastern Conference final for the first time in Hawks since the 60-win team. I think we got swept by the Cavs. That 60-win roster got swept by the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals, the LeBron-led Cavs. And that was the first time. That was the first time Nate McMillian had gotten out of the first round. And he made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. So there's that. History has not been on his side when it comes to how things end for his career. I think they start off well. They started off well in Seattle. They started off well in Portland. They started off well in Indiana, but they always seem to end the same with him fizzling out, not being much of a player's coach, and especially that is more and more prevalent in today's game, but also just not getting the results that you need. I think he didn't win. Did he win any playoff series as a Pacers head coach? I don't think so. Granted, that team was without a solidified star, but the same thing in Portland. He started off, made 4 playoff appearances, I think, and then slowly but surely his regular season record declined and he was gone. I think I've always said this. I think that the Eastern Conference Finals run really made us select the wrong guy to guide this team going forward. He's kind of an old school guy, and I think John Collins alluded to it in the post presser, saying that maybe a more veteran team would be more susceptible to being led by a guy like Nate, who kind of just lets things go as they in the middle of playing, rather than calling a timeout when you just the other team just went on a 15-0 run. He'll stand there. There isn't much challenges. He doesn't really, talk to the refs or go at the refs when they're not playing call. It looks as if he's not going to bat for his players. His rotations weren't that great. But all of this stuff was on the heels of, an Eastern Conference Finals run. You couldn't. It was very difficult for you to pick somebody other than Nate McMillian after that. Now, what I will say is that a lot of his Eastern Conference Finals run success was because of Trae Young. If anybody remembers and was watching, Trae Young put on a playoff performance, especially for his first playoff performance, that was absolutely incredible. From the Knicks series, which was kind of the first thing that his announcement, to what they did against the Sixers in game 1 and were able to win in 7, even though he technically didn't shoot the ball very well in game 7. He still made a couple of critical shots in his game 1 in the Eastern Conference Finals. I still am willing to debate with someone that game, that series goes to 7, and I think the Hawks win had Trae Young not rolled his ankle on the ref's foot. It kept him out until game 6, where he was hobbled and just wanted to give his team a chance to try to play. So Nate McMillian was really the beneficiary of a very hungry Hawks team and an on-fire Trae Young. That's why we made that run and got him his contract. But it was easy to see after last year that his offenses stagnated. It was easy to see that his after timeouts play calling was limited. It was just really easy to see that he did a lot of the same thing that Lloyd Pierce did. He ran so much pick and roll ISO ball that it became predictable. And so what teams did, like Miami last year in the playoffs, was they would trap Trae Young at the top of it. And since we didn't have a bona fide, solidified secondary ball handler to take some of that pressure off, it kind of led to the ball coming out of Trae Young's hands, or him taking an ill-advised shot because he feels like he gives the team a best chance. And it just was not good, as we saw in the playoffs against Miami, who was a great defensive team with a great head coach, by the way. So now Quin Snyder comes in. Since Nate's firing, we're 2-1. We won our first 2 games since Nate's firing. Earlier tonight, we lost to the Wizards in Quin's first time on the bench, which was, for a couple of different reasons, is a very, very bad loss. But at the end of the day, anytime that you're trying to implement anything new, this season, to me, is pretty much a wash. It's pretty much a wash. We are doing something, that's rarely done. I don't remember when the last time it was done, was bringing in our future head coach in the middle of the season that another coach was fired. It's not going to be easy for him to implement all of the things that he wants to implement. It's not going to be easy for the players to adapt to the things that he wants to implement. He's going to need an offseason. He's going to need to start training camp, doing the things that he want to do, helping out those players, and building those relationships. So this season is pretty much a wash. If we start to see immediate results, that is great. But to me, this season is a wash. But I have a question. If Trae Young is labeled a coach killer, why wasn't Domantas Sabonis labeled a coach killer? He had 3 head coaches in 3 years. I think that label comes from people who just automatically don't like it. We already know that a lot of the players and coaches don't like Trae Young because he's 6 foot tall, a little bit obnoxious, and he'll bust your favorite player up in the middle of a game for 40 and 10. I think that's where it boils down to. Some of the players, they voted him 12th in the Eastern Conference Finals for guards. I mean, I can't name 11 guards in the East that are better than Trae Young. So that's what we call hate, ladies and gentlemen. So stop with the coach killer narrative with Trae Young. Let's let this season play out. If we make a run, then that's awesome. If we don't, man, that it is what it is too. We own our own draft pick this season, despite having DeJounte Murray in a trade. They say we gave up too much. We gave up Charlotte's pick. We gave up a pick 2 years from now, and we had a pick swap 2 years after that. Like, it's not too much for a guy that brings what he brings to the table. I think that I'll reserve my judgment for this until after next season, or in the middle, at least, of next season. If it's completely not working out, then it won't be the coach's fault. It'll be personnel changes. He has to clean up everything that he's coming in. He's been in there for less than 36 hours. So I'm going to reserve judgment. I do think it is a good hire. It's a top candidate coming into a team that has some front office troubles, that is directly at 500, I think, right now. But the roster has plenty of talent. You got some young guys. I think they can focus on development of AJ Green and Jalen Johnson, along with even guys like Tyrese Martin, and giving more opportunities to guys like Double O, my guy Double O, Onyeka Okongwu, and eventually, I'm going to say it, probably shipping out Clint Capella and losing Bogey because of the fact that their contracts, Bogey's contract, I think, is up next year, but I think he has a player option, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe this was the player option year. But Clint Capella, as good as he is at what he does, I believe that he is limiting the Hawks because he is so good at rebounding and so good at rim protecting. It leads people to stay out of the paint. And I don't think him and John Collins play well together because of the fact that Clint is a paint clogger and John is not the greatest shooter, so he needs to be in the paint as well. They're both role guys, essentially. While John is the better shooter, I think he's better suited as the primary role guy in a pick and roll situation. Sometimes he can pick and pop to that mid-range, but he's shooting the ball not so great from 3, so I think that, they clash. But either way it goes, I think Quin Snyder will be able to figure that out and maximize the personnel that he has. And I think next season is the season that we can really base our opinion on this hire, whether going on to Nate McMillian at this time was the right move. I think it all remains to be seen. I'll be back with more content. It's your boy, Man Down Zo.